35 pirate boats swarmed a U.S. Navy destroyer, and this ended in total chaos. 35 pirate speedboats emerged from the rain-whipped darkness. Their target? Not a vulnerable merchant vessel, but the formidable USS Sentinel, a U.S. Navy Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer. They saw a single ship. They thought they saw vulnerability. They thought their chaotic, screaming wave of fiberglass and fire would be enough. They were about to discover that the U.S. Navy has its own version of a swarm. It's called a coordinated battle network. And it doesn't just create chaos, it commands it. This is the story of how 35 pirates tried to hijack a hurricane and were answered by the eye of the storm. Chaos is a weapon. For those who rule the world's lawless waters, it is their greatest ally, a cloak for their ambitions and a force multiplier for their inferior numbers. They believe that overwhelming, disorienting, and sudden violence can paralyze any foe, no matter how powerful or advanced. They believe that in a storm of confusion, they are the masters, and their enemy is merely a victim of circumstance. On a day that will be seared into maritime history, a flotilla of 35 pirate boats decided to test this theory against the most advanced warship ever put to sea. They targeted a U.S. Navy Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer, a vessel representing over $1 billion in cutting-edge technology, centuries of unbroken naval tradition, and the unwavering will of a nation. They came in a swarm, a moving city of anger and greed, armed with rocket launchers, heavy machine guns, and a fanatical belief that their brand of chaos would win the day. They were about to learn a brutal final lesson in the hierarchy of power. There's a world of difference between their chaos and ours. Theirs is the chaos of the desperate predator. Ours is the chaos of the unleashed tempest. This is the story of what happens when a swarm of hornets decides to attack a hornet's nest armed with targeted fire and righteous fury. The USS Sentinel cut through the placid, sun-dazzled waters of a known trouble spot, its sleek gray form a symbol of imposing order amidst the unpredictable sea. Its powerful AN Spy-1 radar array rotated with a slow, deliberate rhythm, a silent, all-seeing sentinel electronically scanning the horizon for over 200 miles in every direction. It was the pinnacle of American naval engineering, a floating fortress armed with a vertical launch system containing over 90 missiles from long-range standards to devastating tomahawks. Its presence was a statement, a mission of deterrence to keep the vital sea lanes open and free for the commerce of nations. To the crew of over 300 sailors, it was another day of vigilant patrol, a routine of drills and watches. But in these treacherous waters, routine is a fragile illusion, a comfort shattered in the blink of an eye. The first warning was not a visual sighting, but a calm, measured call from the Combat Information Center, deep within the ship's armored heart to the bridge. The air warfare coordinator's voice was professional, but carried a distinct, sharp edge. Captain, we have multiple surface contact, bearing 340. I count 35 plus small craft. Repeat, 35 plus. They are not responding to hails and are accelerating. Speed 50 knots. Formation is a coordinated pincer movement. This is a deliberate attack profile. On the bridge, the captain lowered his binoculars. He didn't need them to see the horizon now. It was blotted out, darkened by a swarm of fast-moving dots, their white wakes like scars on the blue water, growing larger and more menacing by the second. This wasn't an opportunistic raid by a few desperate men. It was an orchestrated, military-style assault on a warship, an act of unbelievable audacity. This was a well-planned trap, and the Sentinel was the prey. The pirates had clearly done their homework. They understood, at least on a basic level, the destroyer's greatest strength was also its potential vulnerability at extreme close range. Their strategy was simple, brutal, and born of a twisted logic. Get inside the ship's defensive bubble so fast and so close that its powerful long-range missiles and 5-inch gun will be rendered useless, their operators hesitant to fire for fear of damaging their own vessel. It was a tactic of madness, A high-stakes gamble, and it was unfolding with terrifying coordinated speed. 35 boats split into three distinct attacking waves with a discipline that spoke of prior planning. The first wave, comprised of the fastest skiffs, fanned out and opened fire with a barrage of rocket-propelled grenades and sustained heavy machine gun fire. Their aim was not to sink the colossal ship, a near impossible task, but to suppress and distract, to create a wall of noise and shrapnel to mask the movements of the others. The rounds sparked and ricocheted off the Sentinel's hardened steel hull and superstructure like angry insects. The second wave moved swiftly to flank the ship on both sides, attempting to surround it and attack from the blind spots near the stern, where the ship's own guns had limited fields of fire. The third and largest wave, consisting of bigger troop carriers and what looked like a command boat, hung back, waiting to move in and board once the defenders were neutralized and the ship's momentum was halted. On the USS Sentinel, the piercing shriek of the general quarters alarm screamed through every passageway, every compartment, every corridor. Sailors trained relentlessly for this exact nightmare scenario dropped everything and raced to their battle stations with a practiced urgency. The ship transformed in seconds from a quiet community to a clenched fist. The mighty 5-inch Mk-45 deck gun forward of the superstructure began its roar. Its first shots not aimed directly at the approaching swarm, but ahead of them. Massive geysers of water erupting in a line as a final, thunderous, and unmistakable warning. The international signal for stop or be destroyed. The pirates ignored it completely. They were committed, their bloodlust up. They were now within a few hundred yards, their faces becoming visible, contorted with yelling and rage, their weapons blazing relentlessly. The chaos they sought to create was beginning to take hold. On the bridge, junior officers shouted reports over the din. In the Combat Information Center, the heart of the ship's nervous system, the captain stood firm before the large tactical displays, his face illuminated by the cool blue light of the screens, his posture ramrod straight. The swarm was almost upon them, a hurricane of hostile intent. They're trying to get inside our minimum engagement range for the big guns, the weapons officer stated, a note of controlled tension in his voice. The captain's response was ice cold, devoid of any fear, filled with only resolve. Then we will welcome them inward, and we will introduce them to our close quarters family. They want chaos? We'll give them a masterclass. Activate Sea Warden Protocol. All stations, weapons free. The order, given with calm authority, unleashed a form of controlled, technical chaos the pirates could never have conceived in their wildest, most terrifying dreams. The Sentinel was not just a missile platform. It was a fully integrated, deeply networked weapons system designed for every layer of defense, from the edge of the atmosphere to the waterline. The first response was invisible and utterly debilitating. The ship's sophisticated electronic warfare suite, the AN/SLQ-32, came online with a silent surge of power. It didn't just jam communications, it executed a targeted direct burst of high-powered microwave energy that slammed into the lead wave of both. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic for their technology. Their outboard engines sputtered, coughed, and died instantly. Their ignition systems fried. Their handheld radios erupted in a screech of static and then fell permanently silent. Their commercial GPS units went dark. The boats, once screaming across the waves in a coordinated attack, now drifted dead in the water, suddenly silent, helpless, and utterly bewildered. Their chaos had been met with silent, systemic annihilation. The second wave, seeing their lead comrades stall and become sitting ducks, hesitated for a critical, fatal second. This was all the Sentinel's targeting computers needed. From the ship's starboard and port sides, two automated, remote-controlled 50-caliber machine gun turrets, the Sea Protect systems, whirred to life with a sinister mechanical hum. They didn't need human gunners exposed on deck. They were slaved directly to the ship's powerful radar and optical tracking systems, their advanced targeting computers calculating wind, waves, lead, and trajectory in milliseconds. They opened up with a sound like a giant piece of canvas being ripped apart, firing hundreds of armor-piercing rounds a minute with inhuman, terrifying precision. They weren't aimlessly spraying at the boats. They were executing a systematic destruction. They aimed at the outboard engines, shredding them into useless metal. They aimed at the fuel tanks, turning them into fireballs. They aimed at the weapon mounts, disintegrating the RPGs and machine guns before they could be fired. Boats in the second wave exploded into fiery shrapnel or were methodically chewed into splinters and sinking wreckage. Their aggressive charge turned into a desperate, futile fight for survival. The chaos was now entirely theirs, a chaos of fire, water, and death. But the third wave, the troop carriers and the command boats, seeing the focused fire on the other waves, mistook it for an opportunity, a lapse in the defense. They believed the destroyer was distracted. With a renewed burst of speed, they closed to within 50 yards, the closest anyone had gotten, throwing grapnels and ropes onto the stern rails and superstructure, preparing to board the seemingly vulnerable ship. This was their final catastrophic miscalculation. The Sentinel's crew was waiting, ready and eager. From concealed firing positions behind blast shields and hatches along the main deck, sailors opened up with a devastating crossfire from M240 machine guns and Mk-19 automatic grenade launchers. The 40mm high explosive grenades arced through the short distance with a low thump, landing with devastating effect directly amidst the clustered troop boats. The explosions were catastrophic, concussive blasts that turned the water into a churning hell of fire, smoke, shrapnel, and debris. What the precision guns missed, the area saturation of the grenades obliterated. Any pirate who miraculously survived the initial blast was met with precise, disciplined rifle fire from the ship's security team, who picked off targets with cold efficiency from the higher decks. The attempt to board was over in seconds, ending in a complete and utter massacre. The initial pirate chaos, their intended weapon, had been completely inverted and transformed into a U.S. Navy-led maelstrom of precise, overwhelming, and righteous violence. The once confident swarm was now a scene of apocalyptic destruction. The fight, from first shot to last, lasted less than 15 minutes. When the captain gave the order to cease fire, the sudden silence that fell over the ship was deafening, broken only by the crackle of burning wreckage and the cries of the wounded in the water. The sea around the USS Sentinel was a graveyard of their ambition. "Search and rescue," the captain said, his voice echoing in the now quiet CIC. "Launch the RHIBs, pick up survivors. They will be processed for intelligence, provided medical aid, and then they will face the full weight of modern justice. Let every vessel listening on these frequencies hear this. Let the world see the cost of this arrogance." Small, rigid-hull inflatable boats were swiftly launched from the destroyer, not for battle now, but for the grim task of recovery. American sailors, now transitioning from warriors to guardians of the law, pulled bloodied, defeated, and shell-shocked pirates from the oil-slicked water, immediately offering basic medical aid before securely zip-tying their hands. The operation was conducted with a chilling professional efficiency that was in many ways more terrifying than the battle itself. It was the calm, unassailable certainty of victory and the moral authority that followed. The message was not just in the destructive power displayed, but in the humanity and lawfulness shown immediately afterward. The strong do what they will, and the weak suffer what they must. But America, even in its righteous fury, chooses order over anarchy and law over savagery. The pirates had sought to create chaos to hide their weakness. The U.S. Navy responded with a greater, more powerful chaos to demonstrate its impossible, unassailable strength. This brutal encounter was more than a mere battle. It was a definitive clinic in modern naval doctrine and a stark revelation of American military philosophy. It was a demonstration that American strength is not just about the immense size of its guns, the incredible range of its missiles, or the raw tonnage of its fleet. It's about the seamless integration of complex systems, the brilliant application of disruptive technology, the unparalleled skill of its crews, and the unshakable courage of every single sailor who stands a watch. The pirates believed their numbers could generate a chaos that would overwhelm technology and training. They learned, in the most final way possible, that true, decisive chaos is not born from disorder, but from the precise, calculated, and overwhelming application of absolute power. To every adversary watching on every ocean, in every hidden cove and secret port, the sea may be vast, but there are no shadows deep enough to hide you, no waves high enough to protect you from the swift and certain justice of the United States Navy. We do not just rule the waves, we dominate every single inch of them, from the ocean floor to the upper atmosphere, with an iron will and a righteous purpose. You may try to bring the chaos, but we will always, always bring the storm, and we will always, always prevail.